the small colonial town of Nandaur, tucked deep in the heart of northern India. It was a place where life moved slowly, where people knew each other's names, and secrets rarely stayed hidden. But one case from that year slipped into obscurity, buried under dust and forgotten files. A wife claimed she was being poisoned. A husband insisted he was only trying to help. The police recorded her words, but could not explain her strange state of mind. What started as a simple box of sweets became the key to one of the most unsettling cases in the region's history. Locals would later call it the sweetness and the shadow. The story began with love, or at least what seemed like it. Every evening, after finishing his day's work, the husband would return home carrying a small box. Inside, always the same treat, balushahi, a rich, syrupy delicacy, golden brown and carefully made. At the time, such sweets were expensive. Only the wealthy could afford to eat them daily. The woman accepted them gratefully. She believed this ritual was a symbol of her husband's affection, a daily gesture to remind her she was loved. But gradually, the ritual began to take on a darker meaning. After eating, she would feel weak. Her body grew heavy. Within an hour, her eyes would close, and she would slip into a deep, dreamless sleep. When she woke the next morning, she felt restless, her chest tight, her thoughts unsettled. It was as though her mind had been tampered with. At first, she ignored it. But with each passing day, the feeling grew stronger. Her sister-in-law, Munmun, began behaving strangely. Once affectionate, she now looked at her with an odd smile as though mocking her condition. Even her mother-in-law's eyes carried suspicion. The house itself seemed to turn hostile. Rooms that once felt safe now felt suffocating. Shadows seemed to follow her. She started to believe she was being watched, not just by family but by unseen eyes in every corner. When she asked her husband why he stared at her, he only replied, "I am always here with you." But his eyes glinted with something unfamiliar. He smiled faintly, and once again she slipped into unnatural sleep. Fear grew. She began to avoid the kitchen. She avoided conversations. She walked through her own home like a stranger. The sweets no longer brought comfort. They brought terror. Her health declined further. She grew pale, weak, and anxious. The very people she trusted most now felt like enemies. She began writing letters. These writings, later found in the case records, described her torment. One line read, "They bring me sweets each night. They say it is love. But it feels like chains pulling me into darkness. I sleep, and when I wake, they look at me as if I am not myself anymore." Another entry. "Their eyes follow me. They whisper when I leave the room. I am not their daughter, not their wife, not their sister. I am their prisoner." When she tried to speak with her parents, they too appeared worried, though not in the way she expected. They believed she was unstable. They thought her fears were delusions. This isolation crushed her spirit. She had no one to trust, no one to confide in. The sweets remained her only constant, a ritual she now dreaded. One evening, she gathered her courage. She demanded answers from her husband. "Why do I feel this way? Why do I fall asleep against my will? What are you giving me?" For the first time, he admitted the truth. Yes, he had been mixing sleeping medicine into her food. But not to harm her, he claimed. He said it was to protect her. He said she was anxious, paranoid, and needed rest. But his confession only deepened her suspicion. If he could drug her so easily, what else was he capable of? In her eyes, he was no longer her protector. He was her captor. Police records mention a physician, a local hakim, who was consulted. His notes survive. He wrote of lemon-flavored tinctures and strange injections, treatments that seemed experimental, even dangerous. To the husband, these were remedies. To the wife, they were evidence of a sinister conspiracy. She accused her husband of working with the doctor, with her in-laws, and even with outsiders. She believed they were trying to silence her forever. Her condition worsened. Witnesses said she grew restless, refusing food, pacing the halls, muttering that she was being betrayed. One night, she was found laughing uncontrollably in her sleep, her forehead wet with sweat. She shouted about poisons, about shadows, about being watched. The family insisted she was losing her mind, but her words were clear, sharp, and consistent. "Each sweet hides a shadow," she wrote in her final note. "They say it is love, but it is a weapon." What became of her is unclear. Some accounts suggest she was sent away to distant relatives. Others claim she died suddenly, her death never fully explained. The police closed the file without answers. They could not prove poisoning. They could not prove innocence. All that remains today are fragments, letters, testimonies, and the haunting name the officers gave the case, the sweetness and the shadow. Was it mental illness, misguided treatment, or a carefully hidden conspiracy? More than a century later, the truth is still lost. But in Nandaur, in 1895, a simple box of sweets became a symbol of fear, suspicion, and one of history's most chilling mysteries.